An icy grip seizes your bones. Your breath hangs frozen in the air. The fire's embers are dead, the last food consumed, leaving only endless wilderness stretching in every direction. No rescue party approaches. There are no trails. No maps guide you. No second chances await. This defines the existence of the mountain man. Individuals who plunged into the unknown armed solely with a rifle, a knife, and sheer willpower. They faced bone-chilling cold, predatory grizzlies, and unseen threats lurking in the woods. One wrong footing, a single error in judgment, and death was certain. Every meal was earned through the hunt. Every injury required self-treatment. Doctors were absent. Mercy was unknown. There was no path out but through. Could you survive? The wild places cared nothing for brute strength. They demanded competence. The skilled endured, the stubborn perished. The unprepared, they became silent markers under the snow. Tonight, we inhabit their world. 10 unforgiving lessons passed down from the 1800s. Our first lesson begins now. Be ready or be dead. 1. Be ready or be dead. Survival in untamed lands hinges on skill, tenacity, and absolute preparedness before you step into them. The seasoned mountain men grasped this truth. They were expert shots, formidable fighters, relentless trackers, capable of living off the land with only a blade and unwavering resolve. Their presence wasn't for leisure. They trapped, they traded, they coaxed fires to life in torrential rain and spoke enough of a dozen tongues to stay alive. Their motivation was the potential reward, or the simple lack of alternatives. Your time in the wilderness was determined by 2 factors: what you carried and what resided in your mind. Inability to hunt meant certain starvation. Ignorance of the terrain led inevitably to being lost. Venturing too far without resupply guaranteed the wild would claim you, leaving only bleached bones behind. Consider John Franklin's 1819 Arctic expedition. He banked on grit alone conquering the environment. He was disastrously mistaken. Without the knowledge of indigenous guides, his crew would have succumbed to the cold or hunger long before reaching their objective. Then there was Truman Everts, isolated in Yellowstone in 1870. His detailed account is featured in a dedicated episode. Seek it out. He spent 37 days utterly alone, starving, freezing, descending into near madness. By some miracle, he barely escaped with his life. The wise, however, prioritized readiness. Captain Randolph B. Marcy literally penned the guide to frontier travel. He emphasized meticulous wagon checks, selecting sturdy draft animals, and packing dependable tools. Those who ignored his counsel found themselves stranded, dead, or facing worse fates. Essential knowledge included constructing basic shelters, starting fires without modern aids, and finding food where others saw only empty terrain. Maintaining presence of mind when circumstances turned dire, as they always did, was critical. Panic killed as surely as starvation, and if injured, you had to possess the ability to stitch a wound, splint a fracture, or prevent infection before it proved fatal. In that environment, even a minor cut could be a death sentence. There was no medical professional coming to your aid. View survival as acquiring the necessary skills before the emergency strikes. As we frequently state, the wilderness grants no forgiveness for mistakes. Yet, you could possess the finest equipment, the toughest spirit, and vast training, but without the correct implements. Number 2. A hunter's arsenal frontier survival depended entirely on his weapons and tools. No successful hunt meant no food. Lacking arms meant a short lifespan. The flintlock rifle was paramount, accurate, lethal, and reliable if properly maintained. Powder, stored in a horn, was measured with care. A vent pick and brush kept the flash pan and touch hole clear, as a fouled rifle was utterly useless. Speed was vital. Pre-wrapped balls and a powder measure, often carved from antler tips, reduced crucial reloading time. Some carried flintlock pistols as a last resort. Quick to draw, but slow to reload. A missed shot was often a death sentence. Beyond firearms, a knife was indispensable. A 6-inch blade, honed to a razor edge, served for dispatching and skinning game. A smaller folding knife handled fine work. The tomahawk or belt axe served multiple roles, chopping wood, building shelters, and if needed, delivering blunt force trauma. Navigation was as crucial as firepower. A brass sundial compass provided direction and time. Maps were essential lifelines, not optional conveniences. The most capable frontiersmen possessed intimate, learned knowledge of the land. Others carried outdated maps and risked being hopelessly lost. Cooking gear was sparse but functional. Perhaps a simple tea kettle, a corn boiler, and a folding skillet. These were lightweight and durable. A cast iron pot, if its weight could be borne, allowed for stews, baking, and more substantial meals. Salt was kept in a horn, ground peppers in a small leather pouch. A possible bag contained crucial miscellaneous items, spare flints, a brass funnel for the powder horn, a multi-tool combining turn screws, a vent pick, and a flint chipper, a ball mold, lead ladle, and extra lead to cast ammunition in the field. A tow worm and ball puller were essential for maintaining rifle function. Personal effects were minimal. A horn comb, a leather journal, a brass pencil, a sewing kit containing thread, needles, and spare buttons. A toothbrush, basic hygiene was unexpectedly important. A twisted wire fork, a spoon, and perhaps a few rounds of wrapped chocolate for a moment of comfort. The bedroll consisted of an oilcloth tarp and a wool blanket. Extra clothing was limited to essential layers: a linen shirt, wool socks, a wool pullover, and fingerless gloves. Food was light but calorie-dense. Many carried a loaf of dark bread, dried corn, cornmeal, and jerky. Pemmican was the other staple, dense with fat and protein, sustaining journeys over vast distances. Enough to keep moving, but never enough to feel secure. Everything was secured tightly. Leather and brass fastenings held it all together. Thus, in the wilderness, the right instruments separated the living from the dead. And to endure, you absolutely had to know how to treat your own injuries. Out in that unforgiving world, you were the sole medical provider. Number 3. The healer's instinct. Lacking doctors or hospitals in the wild means mistakes in medical care offer no possibility of recovery. Get injured, you must fix it yourself, or fail to survive. The veterans of the frontier understood this. They didn't await aid. They were the aid. Consider Samuel Thompson. He held no advanced degrees, no formal medical training, just a keen intellect and a lifetime spent learning from nature. He developed his own system of therapeutics, using native botanicals to combat illness. Cayenne pepper to stimulate circulation. Lobelia to induce vomiting and purging. Steam baths to break fevers. While others ingested mercury and endured debilitating bloodletting, Thompson's adherents found healing grounded in the earth itself. But wilderness medicine wasn't confined to plants. Survivors had to improvise with whatever was at hand. A fractured bone, locate a straight branch, realign the break, and secure it with binding. No bandages? Tear strips from your own shirt. A deep wound. Pack it with moss or spider silk to inhibit infection. Wilderness medicine is the very essence of survival competence. You needed to control severe bleeding, treat burns effectively, and prevent wounds from becoming septic in unsanitary conditions. Hugh Glass comprehended this reality more intimately than most. In 1823, a grizzly bear inflicted terrible injuries that should have killed him. His own companions abandoned him, believing him dead. But Glass refused to die. He set his own broken leg. He allowed maggots to cleanse the infection in his wounds. Then, sustained by foraged berries and roots, he dragged himself over 200 miles to safety, driven purely by an indomitable will. His account stands as a testament to primal survival. Don't miss our extensive deep dive into Hugh Glass and his harrowing ordeal, every excruciating detail, every struggle, all covered in one epic episode. Ultimately, in the vastness of the wild, the ability to heal yourself is the dividing line between walking out alive or never moving again. Can you stop the flow of blood, mend a broken limb, fight off dangerous infections? But none of that skill matters if hunger overtakes you. And if you lack knowledge of safe edibles, you are essentially digging your own grave. Number 4. Nature's pharmacy. Surviving alone demands recognizing what the land provides for sustenance and healing, and what poses a threat. Old almanacs were filled with proposed remedies for ailments from coughs to snake bites. Some were pure folklore, others held surprising, if accidental, validity. For example, for burns, an 1807 book strangely recommended splashing brandy or rum onto them. Another text from 1847 advised a poultice of grated potato mixed with sweet oil and turpentine, claiming it drew out heat. The alcohol treatment? Utterly ineffective. But the potato? Science later confirmed that compounds in potato peels can indeed aid burn healing. So sometimes the old ways weren't just baseless superstition. Snake bites, however, were a much different and more perilous threat. In 1833, one almanac suggested boiling the bark of a yellow poplar tree into a potent decoction. Wash the bite and drink a pint every half hour. In 1857, a widely circulated story involved a boy bitten by a copperhead who was given half a gallon of whiskey. He did not become intoxicated, but he did survive. The alcohol was medically useless regarding the venom. But the root decoction, perhaps there was something to it. Various cultures globally have utilized similar plant-based remedies for snake venom for centuries. Then there was dysentery, a devastating illness capable of rapidly dehydrating a man to death. An 1807 almanac confidently promised 2 spoonfuls of clarified butter 3 times daily as an instant cure. Others swore by rhubarb, cinnamon, induced vomiting, and even bloodletting. None proved genuinely effective. People continued to die from the sickness regardless. When facing imminent death, desperate measures are taken. Not all historical remedies were foolish. Some contained practical truth, however obscured. But if you are alone in the wild, you must discern useful knowledge quickly. A burn requires cooling water, not liquor. A snake bite necessitates proper medical intervention, not consuming copious amounts of alcohol. Understand what genuinely works. Leave the ineffective historical practices behind. Finding food is one challenge. Preparing it safely, generating sufficient warmth, and surviving the brutal cold nights, that presents an entirely separate set of challenges. Without fire, you become merely another unfortunate soul destined to perish from the cold. Number 5. Firecraft mastery. Fire is fundamental to survival. Without it, you remain cold, wet, and exposed to hunger. Prolonged survival in wild country is impossible without the skill to create it. The frontiersmen carried flint and steel, but if these were lost, they possessed the means to improvise. They understood fire with an almost intuitive grasp, how to ignite it, sustain it, command it. If you find yourself alone in the wilderness, you require this same level of mastery. Friction represents the most ancient method for summoning fire. The hand drill is deceptively simple, yet intensely demanding. You must rapidly roll a spindle between your palms, grinding its tip into a fireboard until the generated heat births a glowing ember. This requires skill, endurance, and selecting the correct type of wood. Then there is the fire plow, a method relying on brute effort. You cut a channel into a piece of soft wood, then push a harder stick back and forth vigorously along the groove like a saw blade. Heat builds, wood dust catches, and then suddenly, flame appears. It's primitive, but undeniably effective. The Iroquois, however, developed a more refined tool, the pump drill. A flywheel and a crossbar mechanize the spindle's rotation, providing steady, controlled, and highly efficient friction. And the bow drill, considered the peak of friction fire techniques. A taut string from a bow is wrapped around a spindle, rotated by a sawing back and forth motion coupled with consistent downward pressure. If you cannot master this technique, you must fervently hope you never lose your matches. Certain tools offer an advantage, simplifying the struggle. The fire piston, for instance, is an ancient device. Air compressed rapidly within a hollow tube heats instantaneously to over 800 degrees Fahrenheit, igniting tinder placed inside. Hardwood, bamboo, even animal horn. The material matters less than achieving a tight seal and smooth action. Flint and steel, though, is the tried and true classic. Strike the steel forcefully against the flint. Observe the shower of sparks. Use char cloth, birch fungus, or dry tinder. Catch a spark and patiently nurture it into a flame. If your knife has a high-carbon steel blade, the spine can serve as the striker. An old file, the edge of an axe head. Any material harder than the flint will create sparks. Magnesium speeds the process dramatically. Shave some flakes into your tinder bundle, strike steel against it, and witness the metal burn with intense white heat. Regardless of the method employed, the governing principle remains constant. Fire will not wait for your mistakes. Success hinges on patience, appropriate pressure, and having the right materials prepared. A second too slow, an unexpected gust of wind, damp tinder, failure means certain freezing, starvation, or death. Learn the art of fire as if your very existence depends upon it, because someday it very well might. While fire provides vital warmth, warmth alone is insufficient for survival. If you cannot rely entirely on your own capabilities, your skills, your knowledge, your instincts, then you will not persevere. Achieving self-reliance. Let's continue. Number 6. Mastering self-reliance. Fracturing a bone far from civilization means no physician is arriving to assist. You face a stark choice: mend it yourself or be abandoned to your fate. This necessitates knowing how to fabricate a splint, and quickly. A severe break can swiftly become life-threatening. Moving improperly or stressing a broken leg without adequate support risks the bone piercing the skin, tearing vital tissue, transforming a difficult situation into a desperate fight for survival. Structure is paramount. Trekking poles can work. Stout branches, too. Anything rigid and straight capable of immobilizing the injured limb is essential. However, raw wood against bone spells trouble. Padding is crucial. Sacrifice a shirt. Gather leaves. Extract stuffing from your gear. Anything to prevent the splint from chafing the injury. It won't look professional, but it must allow you to move. Many envision survival as clean and orderly, like in films. Reality is messy. Out there, perfect solutions are unattainable. You utilize whatever works. The mountain men of the 1800s understood this fundamentally. They endured bear attacks, blizzards, starvation. No hospitals, no safety nets existed. Only innate survival instincts, hard-earned skills and bodies hardened to endure tremendous punishment saw them through. Their buckskin garments offered rudimentary protection. Their extensive knowledge of the land's flora provided sustenance and medicine. But above all, they possessed the crucial ability to adapt instantly. Shelter construction was another vital battle. When weather turned hostile, you built rapidly or froze. Lean-tos were swiftly erected, just a main pole and a sloping wall of branches densely packed with leaves. Minimalist, yes, but sufficient to deflect wind. For greater warmth, a debris hut offered superior insulation. Layers of organic matter, bark, and soil tightly layered to trap body heat. A natural defense against severe cold. On vast open plains, sod houses were the norm. Their thick walls of grass-reinforced earth provided good insulation, though vulnerable to heavy rains. Every survival solution involved trade-offs. John Wesley Powell grasped this balance. In 1869, he led an expedition into the unexplored Grand Canyon. Boats were lost, supplies vanished, but he maintained his composure. He made critical decisions, preserving the lives of his crew. However, self-reliance alone is only half the equation. The land itself dictates the terms, and ignoring its rules ensures you won't last. Number 7. The land is your teacher. The land is the only instructor incapable of deceit. Fail to heed its lessons, and you will not endure. In the 1800s, survival demanded knowing the world around you with an intimacy born of necessity, because your life literally depended on it. Indigenous knowledge represented centuries of observation, learning, and adaptation. The environment communicated through shifting winds, animal signs, the texture of the ground underfoot. Those who paid attention lived. Those who were oblivious vanished without a trace. Controlled burns, practiced by native peoples, sustained healthy forests, managed game populations, and eliminated fuel accumulation before natural wildfires erupted uncontrollably. An individual who comprehended the land was not its victim, but a part of it. John Colter learned this lesson intimately. He fled for his life in 1808, stripped naked, pursued by Blackfoot warriors. He did not succumb to panic. He ran intelligently, through dense thickets, across swift rivers, covering vast distances rapidly. When a pursuer closed in, Colter turned, killed him, and disappeared into a beaver lodge, lungs heaving, heart pounding steadily but controlled. So, true survival is less about the act of running, and more about understanding precisely where to stop, where to conceal yourself, and how to effectively vanish from sight. Every step through the wilderness is a test of endurance. Comfort is non-existent. Rest is fleeting. There is only the burden of your gear and the relentless bite of the wind at your back. Naturally, the legendary mountain men understood this implicitly. Jim Bridger, among the first outsiders to comprehensively map Yellowstone, did not achieve this through guesswork. He interpreted the landscape as if reading a familiar book. Kit Carson demonstrated the same mastery, navigating the Rocky Mountains as if he were an inherent part of them. He was a dedicated student of the wild, learning techniques from native tribes, adopting what proved effective, discarding ineffective methods. Yet, not everyone achieved such mastery over the wild. Some misinterpreted the land's signals, and the land responded with merciless finality. The Donner Party embarked on their journey with grand ambitions, but tragically poor judgment. Ignoring the clear warnings provided by the terrain and climate, winter arrived unexpectedly, and the mountains consumed them entirely. Starvation escalated into madness. Some resorted to consuming anything remotely edible. When nothing remained, they turned on each own. So yes, the wild holds no regard for identity or status. It rewards those who demonstrate respect and ruthlessly claims those who do not. Acquire profound knowledge of the land. Read its subtle signs. Move through it with the grace of belonging, because if you fail to, you won't survive long enough to regret your ignorance. However, reading the land is one challenge. Keeping pace with it as conditions shift unpredictably is another entirely. Storms materialize without warning. Water sources unexpectedly dry up. The prey you were tracking vanishes overnight. Number 8. Adapt or perish, adapt or perish. This was the absolute non-negotiable law of survival in the wild frontier. The untamed environment paid no mind to a man's plans, his expectations, or his arrogance. Cyclical storms struck without notice. Hostile native groups tested resolve. Hunger was a constant companion. Cold penetrated deep, and the land never yielded more than absolutely necessary. Only those possessing the capacity to bend without breaking ultimately survived. John Udell embodied this principle. A preacher turned frontiersman, he faced death directly at the advanced age of 63. In 1858, following a Mojave attack, he dragged himself across 500 miles of desolate desert and rugged mountains, injured and brutalized, but alive. Sheer willpower propelled him forward, coupled with the stark realization that ceasing movement meant certain death. Leaders in the wilderness faced equally high stakes. The individual guiding an expedition could not afford hesitation. A single incorrect decision could doom the entire party, whether through drowning during a river crossing, freezing in an early snowstorm, or being ambushed by raiders. Effective leaders interpreted the landscape, sensed impending dangers before they fully materialized, and altered their course with sufficient speed to ensure their people survived. They understood precisely when to stand their ground, when to retreat, when to engage in conflict, and when to yield. Furthermore, during that era, forging alliances was often essential for survival. A trader who understood and respected the customs of native tribes, who offered gifts rather than displaying arrogance, stood a far greater chance of departing with valuable knowledge and supplies, rather than arrows in his back. The most successful frontiersmen learned invaluable skills from their native counterparts. Techniques for tracking, hunting, and finding the safest routes through potentially hostile territory. Fundamentally, success was built on mutual respect, never on attempted dominance or control. Then there was the extreme cold, the kind that permeated clothing, seeped into bones, and silently claimed lives during sleep. Those who knew how to survive it constructed their shelters wisely. Some excavated snow caves into hillsides, tucking themselves away like burrowing animals. If properly built, with a low entrance to trap warm air and a domed ceiling to prevent dripping, these snow dens could sustain a man through the most ferocious blizzards. Others constructed quinzees, piling massive amounts of snow high, then carefully hollowing out the interior. Walls needed significant thickness, the entrance narrow and low, and the sleeping area elevated to allow colder air to sink. These improvised structures represented the thin margin between waking up stiff but alive and never waking up at all. There were no assurances in the wild, no mulligans. The individual who refused to change, who clung to outdated methods when the environment demanded innovation, was already marked for death. The ones who persevered were those capable of observing an utterly unforgiving world and reshaping themselves to meet its demands. Because ultimately, nature did not yield to a man's will. A man had to yield to nature's. Again, the stark choice: adapt or die. No person survives indefinitely alone. Some leave a lasting legacy, others vanish without a trace. Those with foresight understood the necessity of leaving markers, etching their stories onto the landscape, ensuring they would not be forgotten. Number 9. Leave a trail, tell a tale. Out in those vast, empty spaces, ensuring someone can potentially locate your remains is a pragmatic survival measure. The early explorers recognized this imperative. They documented their journeys, kept journals, sketched maps. This wasn't just for posterity. It was for survival, for themselves and for others who might follow. To disappear without leaving a single trace is akin to never having existed at all. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark meticulously charted the unknown territories, recording every bend in rivers, every mountain pass traversed, every encounter with native peoples. Without their detailed journals, the American West might have claimed countless more lives. Then consider John Muir, who journeyed extensively through what is now the Midwest and South. He diligently noted every piece of agricultural land, every mineral deposit, every tribal territory encountered. His records provided future pioneers with vital intelligence. And what of Jedediah Smith? He carved his legend in the Rockies, meticulously documenting every canyon, every water source, every brutal lesson learned. His maps transformed perilous guesswork into viable strategy. Across the globe, explorers like Gregory Blaxland and William Lawson pushed through Australia's treacherous Blue Mountains, leaving behind reports that converted impassable wilderness into known territory. So documenting your journey wasn't merely academic. It was a tool that preserved lives. It prevented subsequent travelers from succumbing to the same fatal errors made by those who came before. You should adopt this practice. For your own survival, to create a meaningful trail, it is critical to record your experiences. Maintain a logbook. Detail what you observed, where you traveled, what nearly killed you. Consider it your personal survival manual. Should you make it back to safety, your notes might prove invaluable in saving someone else's life. If you do not return, your records might at least explain the circumstances of your demise. Either way, they hold significance. You should also leave physical markers along your path. Stacked rocks, carvings on trees, strips of cloth tied to branches. The specific method matters less than clarity. Should you disappear, potential rescuers need definitive clues indicating your direction of travel. Modern technology like GPS can fail unexpectedly. Old-fashioned physical markers offer reliability. Furthermore, sketch a map. If you lack drawing skill, learn. Mark water sources, areas of danger, safe routes. The artistry is irrelevant. Utility is key. A map can represent the difference between finding needed shelter or walking directly into a fatal obstacle. Always remember, the wilderness holds no regard for your individuality. It can erase your existence in an instant. Therefore, leave your mark, or risk being utterly forgotten. But do you know which path offers the highest chance of survival? Number 10. Follow the waterways precisely. Identifying and following streams and rivers often meant finding your way out, or being permanently lost. In the wild, water serves as your most reliable guide. It is your most crucial survival asset. Following a river usually leads to fresh water, potential food sources, and perhaps even human settlement. Deviate from it, and you risk perishing from dehydration. Rivers and streams function like vital arteries, cutting through the land, leading towards sustenance, potable water, and, if fortune favors you, civilization. In the 1800s, trappers, frontiersmen, and scouts instinctively adhered to waterways. For them, these were natural highways, providing direction through often hostile territories. The Lewis and Clark expedition, for example, utilized the Missouri and Columbia rivers extensively, pushing deep into previously unmapped regions, demonstrating conclusively that following water offers a viable path forward. Animals possess inherent knowledge of water locations. Observe their behavior closely. Birds often circle low near hidden waterholes. Deer and elk follow well-worn trails leading directly to riverbanks or springs. Even insects tend to congregate near damp ground. So, if the terrain is arid and parched, avoid time-wasting guesswork. Look to the natural world for indicators. Certain plant species thrive only where groundwater flows beneath the surface. If you lack awareness of these vital signs, your time in the wilderness will likely be short. To reiterate, lose sight of the water, lose your way, lose your life. Adhere to it diligently. It represents the most dependable route towards safety. Ultimately, the principles of survival are straightforward. Understand the land, remain vigilant, and adapt or face extinction. The mountain men lived by these ironclad rules. The wild did not care about their names or origins, only about what they knew and could do. That fundamental truth remains unchanged.